People whose long-term relationship faded. What was the final straw that made you realize it was time to call it a day? When she broke up with me for the 12th time. We had a long-distance relationship, and whenever we had an issue or a disagreement, instead of engaging in a conversation with me about it, she would say we were done and shut me out for 2 or 3 days before coming back, and manipulating me into groveling for her forgiveness. The last time, I just said no to going back and stuck to it. She freaked out and tried to drive 6 hours to my place at 2 a.m. I got a call from her mom saying she had left in the middle of the night as a heads up, and, upon finally getting a hold of her when she was just a couple hours away, I was able to convince her to turn back. That relationship effed me up for a while, but once I began dating my now fiancé, it was unbelievable to me how wonderful a real, loving relationship with healthy communication can be. Happy you found love, my dude. Mine was not a slow burn like most seem to be, but a very definitive moment. Her brother was living with us, and this was right when Wi-Fi was becoming available to the public. We couldn't afford it because we were broke but kids, so her brother would take my girlfriend's MacBook, it was a gift, and sit on a nearby bus bench and leech off someone's unsecured Wi-Fi. Well, one day we get a call from her sister, and she says we need to get home immediately. Turns out some guys came up and asked him for change for $20, and when he told them he didn't have it, they tried to snatch the Mac and jump in their car. He knew it wasn't his, so he held on to it and tried to get it back, but they were too much. He had gotten dragged by the car, kicked in the head, and then had his leg run over. He was in pretty bad shape. As we turned the corner, didn't know what had happened yet, girlfriend sees cop cars and an ambulance and says this better not have anything to do with my Mac. We walk in, and he's visibly in bad shape, and she is just immediately, "Did you lose my Mac?" I'll never forget his face. He was so ashamed and felt terrible and just started crying. She, however, started screaming, "My computer! My computer!" and hitting him. To the point where the cops considered arresting her. It was an instant eye-opener. That is awful. I feel for her brother, and I hope he ended up okay and realizing how wrong her reaction was. And, aren't you happy you never had children with her? I'd sit in my car after work playing on my phone for like an hour because I just needed a break before going inside and dealing with him. Oof, this one hits hard for me because my long-term partner did this with me. We worked it out though, and we are together and doing great. I am a bird watcher, lame, I know, and we were on this trip and I wanted to do this birdwatching tour. It was like a 2-hour thing, and he kept putting it off, and then eventually I just went alone. It was by far the best part of my trip. I was really hurt that he didn't have a few hours to do something I wanted to do, even though I trekked across several beaches to find the right surf spot for him. It was just one of those things where, like, he was crafty, but not indefensible, and I realized I could do better and be happier. And I am. Birdwatching is not lame. I keep the Merlin app handy at all times, and binoculars in my truck. Last week I saw an American kestrel, bald eagle twice, once actively hunting, plenty of Canada geese, mallards, wood ducks, chickadees, red-winged blackbird, and a murder of crows or more. Birds rock. Things that interest you aren't lame. And glad you are happier. I got to a point where every day I was alone I'd be rehearsing ways to say I want to break up and couldn't bring myself to do it when he got home. At some point I realized that wasn't normal, and for his sake I should just end it before it goes too far. That was a 4-year relationship. For those wondering, I asked him to meet me in the school parking lot, and I simply said, "This is really hard for me to say, but it's the truth. I'm not in love with you anymore and I want to break up." As the words were starting to leave my mouth, my only thought was just say the words. Don't do awkward filler crap you normally do, just say what you need to say and get it over with. Best self-advice ever. Laughing out loud. Same, I would stay late at work or study in the library after class, partly because I didn't want to go home and be around my ex. I dreamed about going somewhere else. I knew I'd get home to dirty dishes, laundry on the floor and no food ready to eat, and I'd be expected to do all that while he sat on the couch. And that right after I finished doing all the chores, and I'd be tired and just wanting to relax, that's when he'd want sex. And probably berate me for not being in the mood. Cleaning up after him was a turnoff, but he still rarely bothered to do his fair share after the first year. I realized I was taking after my mom, and I didn't want that. I left, and now I've got half the cooking and cleaning to do, and I enjoy my time at home. He was a workaholic to the point that I saw him about 6 days per month. Together for 5 years and long distance for 2 of them. I realized one day it felt like just going through the motions when she answered the Skype call. I could see it in her eyes too. We got to a point where we spent more time muted on call, so we could do other things, like she was more interested in reading, and I was more interested in hoping on chat on game with friends. We would sit in silence with our webcams on and barely look at each other. The flame just went out. I eventually just had to sit down and really reevaluate some stuff. It was a really hard conversation and absolutely broke my heart to tell her. We cried together and had the best conversation we had in over a year. Long distance relationships. My first relationship happened when I was still in university. I moved in with him a few months before we both graduated. We started working right after graduation, but our jobs had a total different schedule. Mine was during the day, his was in the evening, and often in the weekend. We rarely spend time together, and I guess we drifted apart. Then I got the opportunity to go to work in another country, and he told me to go for it. We still message each other a few times a year, but that's it. This sucks, but at the same time, at least he didn't try to keep you from achieving happiness. He also loves his job, he still does the same job, and he's good at it. I never would have asked him to give up his job either. I guess it's just life. But I'm glad we're still friends. Somewhere between giving up on small talk and not looking forward to the weekends anymore. I just moved out of our house 2 weeks ago, and I've had a lot of time to reflect. Honestly, it was the pandemic. It really forced us to actually spend time together, and I realized we kind of just didn't do much together at all. I had spent years thinking it was cool that we kept our own friends and space, but once those distractions were taken away, it was just really clear to me that we were more roommates than a couple. After 2 years, she went on a trip. When I picked her up from the airport, she said how much she missed me, and I realized I really didn't. I dated a girl for a bit. She came back from visiting family, and she made a comment saying I didn't miss you as much as I thought I would. I responded with a sigh of relief, as I was planning on breaking up with her. I had a girl break up with me while on a vacation, not because something happened, but simply because midway through, she thought she'd feel more elated going on vacation with a boyfriend for the first time, so obviously I wasn't the one. I was hurt, but I decided to be mature about it, make the most out of the vacation anyways. The way I handled it proved to be a big turn-on for her. Maybe I could be the one, because her Prince Charming would always be understanding and empathetic and cool-headed even when upset. When we came home, she told me she'd made a terrible mistake, and obviously her judgment had been wrong. She insisted on paying for me to take another vacation with her because she felt terrible for ruining mine. It was a classy thing to do. She broke up with me again a few months later because this time she was sure I wasn't the one. I realized I dodged a major bullet. We remained friends, and she found and unfound the one about 8 times in 6 to 7 years. I wonder if wanting to find the perfect match just ruins possible relationships. When I realized I was needed and not wanted. Constantly trying to make someone happy who didn't want to be happy. 10 years ago, I dated a guy for 3 years. We even got engaged. I was only 18, and later found out that my mom bought the ring for him to give to me. He was extremely charming. By all accounts, he was a great guy, would go out of his way to do nice things for people, always sweet to me. My parents, especially my mom, loved him. He started lying about things that were really important to me. I was looking for a job. He said he put in a good word for me with the owner of this one jewelry store. I went there to talk to the owner and pick up an application. Store owner proceeds to tell me that my fiancé made no mention of me, didn't put his good word in for me like he said. Another example. We had planned to go to a concert in another state. Several of my favorite bands were playing. He said he had bought the tickets, and they were at will call. I drive us the 2 hours to get there, only to find out that there were no tickets in his name, or mine, at will call. And the show was sold out. He made all sorts of excuses, saying that the vendor must have messed up. Maybe they did, but he had lied too often to me at this point for me to believe him. Hopped right back in the car and I drive the 2+ hours back, in the rain, while sobbing. I think the true last straw was when he lied about having brain cancer. Here's the thing, he went to the hospital pretty often, and it was always coincidentally right after we had a big fight. The last time though I didn't drop everything to go see him at the hospital, all of it his friends, and my mom, thought I was in butthole. Yeah, I probably was for thinking he was lying about brain cancer when I didn't know for sure, but it's hard to believe a chronic liar about anything. I found out later, from my mom, surprise, that he didn't have cancer. He also refused to give me space after we broke up. Constantly texting, calling, and coming to my house. My mom let him in the house once. I didn't want to speak to him, told him that as well as my mom, and locked myself in my room. My mom proceeded to tell him where the key for the lock was, despite my protesting, and he unlocked my bedroom door so that we could talk. Looking back, it seems pretty harmless, I guess. Maybe I overreacted. I wanted no contact from him though, and he didn't respect that boundary, and it felt like an invasion of my safe space. After we broke up, my mom stayed in contact with him for several years. She always took his side over mine. She refused to meet any of the guys I dated for 6 years after we broke up. I ended up moving out at 19 because of how strained my relationship with my mom became after the breakup. She even bought him things, like a plane ticket. My mom and I have since talked things out, and she admits to being manipulated by him. She has met my current so, and likes him, but doesn't cross boundaries like she did with my ex-fiancé. Looking back, it seems pretty harmless, I guess. I'm not so sure about that one. I could be wrong, but the gut feeling says that sounds like an all-around bad move. Maybe there was an overreaction, but harmless still seems like an understatement. We lived together but lived completely separate lives. Basically a housemate I shared a bed with. Happened twice to me so far. Similar situation. I was with someone for a few years, but it took a while to occur to us that we really didn't fancy each other at all and were happy to be just friends and housemates. So happy to be just friends that when I bought a flat and moved out, he came with me, but to live in separate rooms and have our own lives, while sharing custody of our cats. It worked fine, as there was no romantic or sexual aspect to any of it. Even when we finally went our separate ways, it just happened naturally and calmly. He's a lovely bloke and now happily married with 2 kids. And to prove how horribly amicable it all was, I was his best man at his wedding. I knew it was over when I cared more about his well-being than he cared about his own well-being. I would have moved mountains for him if it made his life easier, and he just continuously put himself in crafty situations. I eventually just gave up. I can't be with someone who doesn't care about themselves. Thank God that's over. The relationship was toxic from the beginning, but we had a kid and leaving would be a big sacrifice. So I told her that we're going to take 10 months to really focus on improving our relationship. And if we can't agree after that time that even one thing has gotten better between us, I'm leaving. I really worked hard during that time to do relationship work with her, but every time I brought it up, she said all our problems were my fault, so there was nothing for her to do. We were in the exact same place at the end of the 10 months, and I started working on my exit plan. Was she surprised that you followed through on leaving? I was watching The Big Bang Theory and realized that despite the running joke that Amy can't get any tiny bit of affection from Sheldon, he still managed to be more loving than my then husband. My now ex-husband did some contract work for the facility I work at. My coworker from a different department complimented on how busy I was, and how the hospital was lucky to have me because I did great work. He said to this person, "Well, I don't know how busy she is, 'cause she's always bugging me. You guys know how it is." It crushed me. And made me realize how little he thought of me. Glad he's now your ex. After 17+ years and she no longer wanted to put in the effort and would rather spend her time on social media talking with everyone but me and ignoring our obvious issues. So after I finally had enough and took her phone out of her hands and forced a face-to-face, sit-down chat of airing the issues. In the end it was worth it, and never realized how much of a prisoner I felt like in my own home until I had my own life again. Lesson learned: if you ever feel like your partner has checked out mentally, they likely have, and don't put up with the bullcrap for the next couple years just because you have a long history together. I promise you, it will only keep you miserable. This thread is making me depressed. I'm still with my husband, but I can feel myself getting more and more frustrated with the relationship. I want more than he can offer me, and I don't mean that I only want him for what he can provide me. I bring in 70% of our income, I pay 80% of bills and mortgage, I do most of the housework, lawn care, house maintenance. Everything really. I wouldn't mind doing all of that if I felt valued and appreciated. I get one full day to be with him and he opted to have a D&D session from 2 to 10 p.m. I constantly hear him say he wants to spend more time with me and he'll call into work, spend maybe 45 minutes with me, then go play games or do something else. I address issues and he'll change the behavior for a couple days and then go back to it. I didn't marry him to have a part-time spouse. He's a very sweet person, and that's what I love about him, but I just don't feel that peace I used to feel in my soul when in the same room as him. So gone for 4 weeks' work. Walked indoor, went to give him a kiss and he turned his head. That was it, he made it easy. Everything he did just began to annoy me. I never saw him in the same loving way that I used to. He just could not talk about anything else except sex. My grandpa died and he was like, "I'm sorry," and then a couple hours later, "You should get effed by 3 dudes and let me watch on camera." I was already realizing he only saw me as a sex object. So I just slowly started ghosting him. Thank you for watching. Please subscribe to be the first to know about Red Rabbit Reader's new videos. If you like our videos, please like them on YouTube and share them with your friends. We welcome your comments below. Press to start another of our videos.